The first few minutes after a nuclear blast are critical. They will decide who lives and who doesn't. In that brief window, chaos unfolds faster than most can comprehend. A blinding flash of light burns through the sky, followed by a shockwave that shatters everything in its path. Windows, walls, cars, and even steel structures. The air itself feels heavy with heat and dust. And in that moment, every second becomes a fight for survival. People who panic, who freeze, who try to look out the window or run toward the destruction, don't realize they're exposing themselves to lethal radiation and flying debris. The smartest move is not to run aimlessly, but to act with precision. You must instantly drop to the ground, shield your head, and take cover behind any solid structure that can block the blast wave. Avoid looking at the flash, it can cause instant blindness. As the shockwave passes, the real danger begins. Radioactive dust and debris, known as fallout, start descending silently from the sky. The places that look safe might actually be traps filled with invisible poison. Knowing which direction the wind is blowing, identifying potential shelters like basements, underground garages, or the inner core of large buildings, and understanding how to create a barrier between yourself and radiation are all actions that separate survivors from victims. The clock is ticking from the very moment the flash appears. You don't have time to think. You have to know what to do, where to go, and how to minimize your exposure before the fallout cloud reaches your location. Every breath of contaminated air, every second spent in the open, every step toward the blast zone increases the risk dramatically. Those who act fast, those who stay calm and move with purpose, stand a chance of surviving what most never prepare for. The invisible killer, radiation, is one of the most dangerous and misunderstood forces released during a nuclear explosion. It doesn't roar like the blast or burn like the fireball. It moves silently, unseen, and undetected by human senses. You can't smell it, taste it, or feel it creeping through the air. Yet it can penetrate deep into the body, damaging cells, organs, and DNA with every second of exposure. What makes radiation so terrifying is its invisibility. It gives no warning, no signal, no sound. One moment you think you're safe, and the next, your body is absorbing doses that can make you sick within hours. When a nuclear weapon detonates, it sends a massive cloud of radioactive particles high into the atmosphere. As this cloud cools, it begins to fall back to Earth in a deadly rain known as fallout. These particles can drift for miles, carried by wind patterns, contaminating everything they touch: soil, water, rooftops, crops, and even clothing. The further you are from ground zero, the less intense the radiation, but that doesn't mean you're safe. Fallout spreads unevenly. One street may be dangerous while the next remains relatively clear. Understanding how this contamination moves is crucial to survival. Radiation danger zones are often divided into levels, from areas with intense, immediate exposure near the blast, to regions miles away that receive delayed but still harmful fallout. The most lethal radiation occurs within the first 24 hours. Yet even after that, the environment remains hazardous. Having access to a radiation meter or dosimeter allows survivors to measure exposure and avoid entering zones that could cause long-term illness or death. But even without advanced tools, you can read the signs. Dust settling on surfaces, metallic smells in the air, dying plants or animals, or reports of increased sickness can all hint at contamination nearby. Limiting exposure isn't just about finding shelter. It's about understanding the principles of time, distance, and shielding. The less time you spend exposed, the lower your dose. The further you are from the source, the safer you become. And the thicker the barrier, concrete, lead, earth, between you and radiation, the better your chances of survival. Every movement must be calculated. Every decision grounded in awareness of this silent threat that lingers long after the explosion fades. Shelter is survival. In a nuclear event, your ability to find and remain in the right kind of shelter will determine whether you live through the hours and days that follow. The truth is simple yet brutal. The people who find effective protection in time have a dramatically higher chance of surviving than those who stay exposed. Radiation weakens quickly when blocked by dense materials, and the right shelter can reduce exposure by 90% or more. Every layer of brick, concrete, or packed earth between you and the outside world becomes a shield against the invisible storm of radioactive particles that descend after the blast. When the explosion occurs, your instinct might be to run, but survival depends on running in the right direction. Open spaces, windows, and cars are death traps in this situation. Vehicles and wooden houses offer almost no radiation protection. Instead, basements, underground parking garages, subway tunnels, or the inner rooms of large concrete buildings are your best defense. These places absorb and deflect radiation, turning deadly rays into survivable doses. The deeper underground you can go, the better. Even a few feet of earth above your head can dramatically reduce exposure levels. If you're caught outdoors, the first priority is to find shelter as fast as possible. Choose a building made of heavy materials, brick, stone, or concrete, and move to its lowest level or the central area farthest from windows and doors. Avoid upper floors and rooftops, as radioactive dust settles on horizontal surfaces. Once inside, seal any cracks, vents, or openings with tape, plastic, or wet cloths to prevent contaminated air from entering. If you have time, bring essentials: water, food, a flashlight, a radio, and first aid supplies. Every item you carry could extend your survival by hours or days. The best shelters are those you already know and can reach quickly: your home's basement, a nearby parking structure, or a school or office with a solid foundation. In a crisis, there is no time to think or search. You must already have a mental map of where to go, how to get there, and what to do once you're inside. The difference between exposure and safety often comes down to preparedness, to knowing, long before disaster strikes, exactly where your refuge lies and how to make it your shield against the deadliest threat humanity can face. The 72-hour rule is one of the most important survival principles after a nuclear blast, a rule written not in theory, but in the hard lessons of past disasters. The first 3 days after detonation are the most dangerous, the period when radiation levels are at their peak, and every moment outside shelter could mean lethal exposure. Fallout from the explosion settles over the landscape like toxic dust, clinging to rooftops, soil, and clothing. During these 72 hours, your mission is simple: stay inside, stay sealed, and stay calm. The radioactive particles outside decay rapidly, losing most of their strength within 3 days. But until then, the world beyond your shelter is hostile, contaminated, and deadly. Inside, survival depends on resourcefulness and discipline. Every drop of water and every bite of food must be treated as precious. You cannot risk contamination by stepping out or opening vents. Before fallout begins to settle, close all doors, seal windows and air gaps with duct tape, plastic sheets, or wet towels, and turn off any ventilation that pulls air from outside. Once sealed in, you must make what you have last. Divide your supplies immediately, ration food into small portions, and limit water consumption to maintain hydration without exhausting reserves. The human body can survive several days with minimal food, but clean water is essential. Drink only from sealed containers that were stored before the blast. Air quality also matters. Even inside, radiation can enter through tiny cracks or air leaks. Choose an interior room or basement with the fewest external walls. If you have access to filters or masks, keep them close. Every hour, radiation outside decreases, but time moves slowly when confined. The psychological strain of isolation and fear can become overwhelming, which is why mental strength becomes as important as physical preparedness. A simple battery-powered radio can be your lifeline to the outside world. It may carry emergency broadcasts about radiation levels, evacuation zones, or safe corridors once the danger begins to fade. Those 72 hours are a test of endurance and patience. Moving too soon can undo all your efforts to survive. The radiation outside might appear harmless, but invisible particles can still cling to clothing and skin, causing sickness later. By waiting out the critical decay period, by conserving energy, supplies, and hope, you give yourself the best chance to emerge alive when the invisible storm has finally weakened enough to face what's left of the world beyond your shelter. An essential survival kit is not a luxury. It's a necessity that can determine who endures and who perishes when catastrophe strikes. In the aftermath of a nuclear explosion, the comforts of modern life vanish in seconds. Electricity fails, communication networks collapse, and supply chains grind to a halt. Stores will empty in hours, panic will take over the streets, and the unprepared will be left defenseless against hunger, thirst, and radiation. That's why every household must have a nuclear emergency bag, a compact, ready-to-grab kit designed to sustain life when the world outside becomes uninhabitable. Water comes first. Clean, uncontaminated water is more valuable than anything else during a nuclear crisis. Radiation and fallout can pollute rivers, lakes, and even rainwater, making it unsafe to drink. Store at least 1 gallon per person per day for a minimum of 3 days. More if space allows. Next comes food. Canned or vacuum-sealed foods are ideal because they don't spoil quickly and require no cooking. Protein-rich items like beans, tuna, peanut butter, and energy bars will keep your body fueled when options are scarce. Respiratory protection is critical. N95 masks or better quality respirators can help block inhalation of radioactive dust, which is one of the main causes of internal contamination. Keep several on hand for every member of the household. A battery-powered or hand-crank radio is another lifesaver. It may be your only source of verified information when the internet and mobile networks are gone. Emergency broadcasts will announce safe zones, government aid locations, and updates about radiation levels. Plastic sheeting and duct tape may seem simple, but together they can transform a room into a makeshift safe zone. By sealing doors, windows, and vents, you create a barrier that reduces the entry of radioactive dust. A sturdy first aid kit is equally vital, not only for cuts and burns but also for treating radiation sickness symptoms, which can include nausea, weakness, and skin damage. Include essential medicines, pain relievers, antiseptics, and medical gloves. Potassium iodide tablets are another overlooked necessity. Taken at the right time, they protect the thyroid gland from absorbing radioactive iodine, one of the most common and dangerous isotopes released after a nuclear blast. Store them in a cool, dry place and learn the proper dosage for each family member in advance. Add a flashlight with extra batteries, a multi-tool, waterproof matches, and copies of important documents sealed in plastic. If possible, include a change of clothes and a pair of sturdy shoes for each person, along with blankets to stay warm if power and heating fail. Every item in this kit represents foresight, a deliberate act of preparation that gives you a fighting chance when the systems of civilization fall silent, and survival depends entirely on what you have at arm's reach. The aftermath of a nuclear blast is a world unrecognizable, silent, gray, and heavy with the weight of devastation. Surviving the explosion itself is only the first battle. What comes after is a test of endurance, intelligence, and humanity. The landscape is altered beyond recognition. Familiar landmarks reduced to ashes, the air thick with dust, and the ground coated with a fine layer of radioactive fallout. Even the simplest actions, stepping outside, drinking water, touching debris, now carry risks that could prove deadly. To live through this new reality, one must learn to adapt, to rebuild routine and safety in a world where both have been shattered. Decontamination becomes the first crucial task. Radiation clings to clothing, hair, and skin, and even small particles can continue to harm the body long after the explosion. Remove all outer garments before entering your shelter or safe zone, and seal them in plastic bags. Wash thoroughly with soap and clean water, not hot water, which can open pores and allow radiation to penetrate deeper. Avoid touching your face, eyes, and mouth during the process. Every motion must be deliberate, every action calculated to minimize contact with contaminated materials. Finding clean resources becomes the next challenge. Natural water sources like rivers, lakes, and even rain may be poisoned for weeks. The safest water comes from sealed containers or underground supplies. If filtration is possible, use multiple layers of sand, charcoal, and cloth before boiling. Food, too, must be handled with caution. Crops and livestock exposed to fallout may be unsafe. Canned goods that were sealed before the blast are among the few reliable sources of nourishment. Identifying and preserving these supplies can make the difference between slow starvation and sustained survival. Reconnecting with others is equally essential. Isolation can destroy the human spirit faster than hunger or thirst. Once radiation levels decrease enough for cautious travel, establishing communication and rebuilding community become priorities. Working together increases the chances of finding safe shelter, sharing resources, and defending against new dangers. But contact must always be cautious. Verify that those you meet are free from severe contamination or illness before allowing close proximity. And above all, mental resilience becomes the anchor of survival. In a world stripped of normalcy, despair can be as lethal as radiation. The trauma of destruction, the loss of loved ones, the constant uncertainty, all weigh heavily on the mind. To endure, you must find purpose even in ruin, protecting others, rebuilding shelter, maintaining order. Keep routines, no matter how small, record days, set goals, find reasons to continue. The strength to survive this changed world will come not only from supplies or shelter, but from an unbroken will, the quiet, determined belief that even after the world burns, life can begin again. In a world full of noise and fake headlines, Frontline Global Alerts brings you the truth. Bold, real, and unfiltered. Stay informed before the world reacts. Backhand index pointing right. Subscribe now to Frontline Global Alerts, because truth doesn't wait, and neither should you.